Hi, you are listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm Macy Renee. I'm so excited that you're joining me wherever you are, and I hope that you enjoy the episodes. If you're brand new here, welcome. Just know that it's best sometimes to start from the very beginning, although you can definitely jump around. But this podcast kind of builds upon each of the episodes, starting with episode 1. So if you happen to catch this one first and you want everything to make more sense, I highly encourage going to the very beginning and just catching up with us. I have a lot of people that do that. It impresses me so much. Not only that you all go from one and catch up, but how quickly you all seem to do it. It's always so impressive. So today I want to talk about emotional regulation and the importance of emotional regulation and what it may look like if you are not emotionally regulating yourself, and how it plays into parenting and raising your kids if you are a parent. So if you're brand new here, I will start by saying I am not a mom yet. I do not have little human children. I have a little baby Yorkie. Actually, he's not a baby, but he's only 3 pounds. He's full grown. He's 7 years old. So he's like our little baby. But I don't have human children. However, before I became a full-time entrepreneur coach, I was a pediatric occupational therapist for the birth to age 3 population, and I practiced actively for 6 years. Before I was a practicing pediatric occupational therapist, I worked with children with special needs for about, probably 4 to 5 years. And I was what was called a CLS worker, where basically I went into the homes of the families and taught their kids everyday living skills, like how to brush their teeth properly and how to get dressed and how to follow a schedule and how to order their own food when we went out in public, and all of those important skills that we sometimes take for granted. So as an occupational therapist, which I have been missing a little bit lately, I love what I do as a coach. I'm so grateful for being able to be an entrepreneur and build my own schedule and build a life that has a lot of freedom. But I will say, I was not miserable as an occupational therapist the whole time. The parts that made me miserable were before I had coaching skills. So I will talk a little bit about that. Before I was emotionally regulated, my job as an occupational therapist was extremely draining. So if you're in the healthcare field, if you're a teacher, if you're working in a high stress environment, there are so many careers out there that are high stress. I'd be here all day if I named them all. But if you're finding that you're very overwhelmed and you're very stressed in your day-to-day job, sure, it can be the environment and the people, but it really ultimately comes down to how well you are emotionally regulating yourself. So I had a story for a very long time before I really got into coaching that my job was making me miserable and that I couldn't do it the next 40 years of my life, and that it was just going to be this daunting task to do every single day for the next 40 years. And I really deeply believed that for a very long time. And then whenever I hired my coach and started learning how to regulate my nervous system and heal my old traumas and process and learn my brain, it definitely made my workload so much better. And so I still made the decision, obviously, that I wanted to eventually transition out of occupational therapy and, become a full-time life coach. But there's still days where I really miss it because now I have so many tools where it's like, I don't think that it would be as overwhelming. Would it still be stressful? Absolutely. It just comes with the job and working with babies and toddlers, especially those that are medically fragile or developmentally or intellectually delayed. But at the same time, it was really a rewarding career for me. And so I've been looking back at my pictures that families took of me working with their kids and, sent them to me. I've been looking back on those. I've been looking back at videos. There's still several families that I keep in contact with. And whenever I'm in town back in Kentucky, sometimes it works out where I'm able to see them and just see how big my kiddos that I, once had are getting. And it's so special. So anyways, I've been kind of missing it. And I thought, I haven't really brought my OT knowledge to the podcast, but it really pairs nicely with what I'm doing as an emotional intelligence coach. So I thought that this episode might be super helpful for you if parenting just feels like it's wearing you down, especially if you have just kids that have additional needs. And maybe you feel overwhelmed, but you don't even have to have kids that have additional needs. Sometimes it's just parenting can be exhausting, but especially if you're not emotionally regulated. So I want to talk about this skill because it is a skill. It's a learned skill. And I want to try and equip you as best as I can to get you through these stressful days where maybe you feel a little bit out of your body, a little bit on edge. Maybe you are not showing up as the parent or person that you want to be because you're not emotionally regulated. You're not showing up as the spouse you want to be, whatever. We're going to talk about it today. Okay, so here is the very first thing that I want you to know. When I was actively practicing as a pediatric occupational therapist, one of the skills that I actually worked on with babies and toddlers was social emotional skills and them being able to regulate themselves. Why am I saying that slowly and why am I saying that very clean and clear? Because it was a skill that these children had to be taught. When I tell you that my job was really stressful as an OT, it was because I was trying to teach children how to emotionally regulate when they're screaming their head off, when they're hitting, when they're throwing things at me. I had a few kids spit on me. I had kids, just toss freaking Hot Wheels at my head. I had kids that did not know how to emotionally regulate because they're children, okay? Because they're children and their brains are not fully developed. P.S. Your brain actually doesn't fully develop until you're 25 years old. So there's a lot to learn up through that point. And I was also an occupational therapist by the time I was 23. So not only did my brain still have some growing to do, but I also had a brain full of unresolved trauma. Even though I had gone through 17 years of therapy, I hadn't actually healed from it. I had talked about all of my traumas for 17 years. I had repeated myself over and over and over again for years. And so I felt good expressing it, but I didn't have all of the tools to actually navigate it or understand it. So I was triggered a lot as an occupational therapist working with these kids who were launching Hot Wheels at my head and turning into limp noodles on the floor and screaming and kicking and, spitting and throwing things and running away. It was very hard to stay patient whenever they were triggered because it was also triggering me. So really quickly, to go back to what I initially said, these are skills. Emotionally regulating is a skill that has to be developed, which leads me to, if you are not emotionally regulating yourself, you are going to have a very hard time teaching that to other people, including your children. Okay, so whenever I have clients, coaching clients that are like, I'm screaming my head off at my kids, I'm on edge, I'm losing it, my kids are not sleeping, it's making me frustrated. Like when they don't put on their socks or shoes in the morning, I'm, like totally seeing it as disrespect. I'm screaming my head off, I'm losing it. I'm going to be known as the mean mom or the angry mom or dad. I don't have male clients at this point, but I've heard some of my female clients talking about how dads get frustrated too, right? And it doesn't even matter like who it's happening with. It could be grandparents. It's the fact of the matter is going back to emotionally regulating your nervous system is a skill that has to be learned. So if you are not emotionally regulating yourself, you cannot teach your children that. And you didn't learn that because it's possible your parents didn't have that skill. So this is how we get in cycles of this kind of trauma that perpetuates itself, where you're standing back and you're looking at your parenting and you're like, I'm not being as present. I'm not fully here. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm, maybe disciplining. I'm taking out all of my frustrations on them, on my husband. Like our family unit doesn't feel as close as I want it to be. Things feel very stressful. I'm overwhelmed. My job is adding on so much pressure. Like if you notice that this is the kind of feelings and talk that you're having with yourself, your nervous system is likely unregulated. Okay? So all of this brings me to, and we're going to talk about a little bit about how you can do this, but where I want to go with this is that emotional regulation is the ability to exert control over your own emotional state. So if you've been listening to the podcast a while, I talk about buffering and what that means. That's episode, I believe, 3, if you're brand new here. I talk about sitting with your feelings, which is also very important. And I talk about how we often are filled with a bunch of mind drama that leads to the emotions that we're feeling in our body, which leads to the actions we do or do not take, which leads to our results, right? These are the basic kind of foundational things that you will hear me repeat over and over and over as you're here. But what's important about the emotional regulation skills is that what you have to know is that negative emotions or emotions that feel negative, because I really don't believe that there are emotions that are negative versus positive to have as a whole. Like I don't look to my clients having what they would consider a negative experience and be like, that's a bad emotion you're having or that's a good emotion you're having. I don't mean positive, negative like that. I mean that there are going to be emotions that you experience as a human that feel positive in your body and feel negative in your body. There are going to be emotions you have that feel comfortable and cozy in your body and fun, and there's going to be emotions that feel uncomfortable and very bleh in your body. Okay, so you're going to have that range no matter how much money you make, no matter what kind of house you live in, no matter where you live in the world, no matter what. Okay, it doesn't matter if you are sitting in the corporate corner office. It doesn't matter if you've reached the top of your career. None of that is actually what will help you regulate your emotions. It's nothing external. That's why this work is so big and so important, because your ability to regulate really truly means that you have control over your own emotional state. This is why I love being a coach and why I love helping my clients, because I know when they learn this skill, when they learn the skills that are, underneath the umbrella of emotional regulation as a whole, aka emotional intelligence, whatever comes their way in life, they will be equipped with the tools to handle it. Like I shared last episode that I just celebrated a milestone that I've been excited to get to for years, right? 6 figures as a coach, which is so exciting. However, if I don't have if I only looked at what I'm doing here as the external things, right? Like the money, whatever it allows me to do. If I couldn't emotionally regulate myself, none of those milestones would mean much of anything, okay? And the reason being is because you have to consider that there are going to be times in your life where it feels like the rug or the carpet has been ripped from underneath you, okay? And it's how you respond in those moments that matters most. So all of that to say is that while it's amazing to celebrate this milestone, and it's just the beginning for me, right? And I have so many big goals and to go way further. What I want to tell you about the importance of emotional regulation is that if I lost everything tomorrow and had to move back home to Kentucky and live with my grandparents, or as I, sometimes say, on the side of the road in a box, because sometimes as an entrepreneur, your brain gets super dramatic when things don't feel like they're going well and you think you're going to live on ramen noodles or rice on the side of a road in a box, okay? And sometimes it really feels true, okay? But here's what I do know if that were to ever happen. Now, obviously, I'm doing a lot of work to try to prevent all of that from happening. However, if that were to happen, let's just say worst case scenario, I know that I would have the skills to move through it without being in a deep, dark, awful hole, which is different as my life experience from even 6 years ago before I hired my coach. 6 years ago, I felt like I was in the deep, dark hole, alley, trench, valley, like however you want to describe it, with mud and sewer and rats and drowning. Like it literally, all of the most gruesome things that I can tell you is how it felt. Because I did not have the emotional intelligence or regulation skills to be okay without external things changing. Meaning that I wanted certain people to change. I wanted certain people to apologize for what I had experienced in my childhood and my adulthood. I wanted people to be different than who they were so that I would feel better. I wanted people to follow my rules so that I would feel better, right? I wanted to be filthy rich just because I thought that would absolutely make me feel better, right? Like everything external was based on I won't feel happy until, okay? If you're thinking that you need something outside of you right now to be happy, even a new job, right? Even a new set of friends, a new husband, a new wife, whatever, like you need a different life in order to be happy. What I want to challenge you on, and you can want to punch me in the face for saying this, is that you don't need any of the external things to change. You need to work on the internal emotional regulation of learning how to calm your nervous system in the circumstances that you're in right now. And when you have calmed your nervous system and you've learned the tools of emotional regulation, then you can go make big decisions that are going to change your life. So it's a lot of times what people do that has them going the wrong direction, I would say, is that they're waiting for the external thing, person, circumstance to change in order to dictate their internal emotional state. So it's like if my husband would actually put his socks in the hamper instead of next to the hamper, I'd be a happier wife. And that feels very true, ladies, right? Like we feel like it's very true if our significant others would just behave the way that it feels good in our mind for them to behave, then we would be happy, right? Which means that our happiness is based on another person's behavior, which means that if they're not operating in our emotional kind of control bubble, then we're not able to self-regulate without them being different than who they are. That's just one little tiny example, right? And of course, you guys, I want to say that there are going to be people who listen to this who are probably in some very shitty circumstances. And I'm not dismissing that at all. I'm not telling you to stay in circumstances that are completely wearing you down mentally and emotionally. But what I am saying is that if you're still in that circumstance, there's going to be some reasons why. One, you haven't learned how to emotionally regulate, which means you haven't fully stepped into your power. And two, because of that, you don't feel like you have control. You're waiting for something to change in order to feel like you have more control. Okay? And what I am telling you to do is not stay in circumstances that are not serving you. I am telling you that first you have to make your body feel safe and know that you have your own back emotionally. You have to learn how to regulate, okay? Which is, again, a skill. So if your parents didn't know how to emotionally regulate, if their parents, your grandparents, didn't know how to emotionally regulate, the chances are you don't have that skill set built, okay? And if you don't have that skill set built and you're noticing that you're triggered by your children, by the things that they're doing, by the things they're saying, by their emotional experiences, that is also a telltale sign that you're not emotionally regulating yourself, right? Like you're not taking care of your emotional needs. You're not looking at them, maybe you're not addressing them. And it may not be because you're completely ignorant to it. It may be that you just don't know. And the whole basis of my podcast and even working with me is to build your self-awareness so that once something becomes an aha light bulb in your brain, that you actually have someone who can take you through the steps to change it, right? So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh shit, I am this person, this is me, I really need help with this, that's when I would tell you, like, go schedule a consult, right? Go schedule a consult so we can talk about what's going to be best to help you with these skills. But let's continue to kind of go down this track, right? So the first thing is knowing that with emotional regulation, you have to be willing to sit in the discomfort of your quote unquote negative emotional experiences, not because they're actually negative, but because they're very uncomfortable. So what people tend to do is they go to the alcohol bottle, right? You grab the vape pen or the cigarette or the weed or the, snacks. You're not even hungry. Your body is not hungry, but you need like something to take the edge off. So you go get a gallon of ice cream and you turn on Netflix and you binge for 8 hours, or you get on, TikTok or Instagram and you scroll for hours and hours. Maybe you shop online. Those Amazon Primes are coming in hot. There's so many ways that our brain sneakily distracts us from emotionally regulating in a healthy manner. And you might think this is not a really big deal, right? Like it's not a problem. It keeps me from being in a bad mood, or it keeps me happy, right? But at the root, if you weren't able to drink the alcohol, if you weren't able to smoke the cigarette, if you weren't able to use marijuana, if you weren't able to shop online, if you weren't able to just go to the pantry and grab whatever snacks because you're bored or you're feeling something, you don't know what it is, if you weren't able to just scroll for hours, if you weren't able to log into Netflix or Hulu or whatever it is, if you weren't able to do all of those things, would you be okay? And so what I challenge my clients to do a lot of times is sit with themselves in silence. I want you to sit in silence. I don't want you to have a drink of anything. I don't want you to have any food in front of you. I don't want you to have the TV on. I don't want you to have your cell phone nearby because it's such a quick distractor. Like I can speak from experience. If my phone is anywhere within arm's reach, even if I'm trying to sit with myself in absolute silence, I will look like 10 minutes later and realize like somehow my brain subconsciously grabbed my phone. So I tell them like, put your phone away, right? Put it far out of reach to where you are going to be more conscious when you're doing this sitting with yourself work. Don't have any distractions, none, silence. And I always tell them like, this is not meditation. You're not trying to get yourself in a place of nothingness per se. You are just observing what happens when you have not delegated your brain any sort of task but sitting in silence. Literally, that's it. I want you to basically sit on a couch or in a chair or on the floor, not in bed because you'll probably fall asleep. That's also a form of buffering.
I want you to sit and I want you to stare at the walls, basically. Okay. Like whenever I'm doing this task with clients to say, like, I just want you to see what happens when you're not able to unload the dishwasher, when you literally have to slow down. Do you remember when COVID happened and everybody lost their crap initially because everything shut down and we were like, or the news was like, you're going to be in your home for at least 2 weeks and everything's going to be shut except for grocery stores to get like emergency things, but don't come out of your house. Don't do anything. Okay. People lost it initially. Some people found that they loved it. I was one of those people. I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, I didn't love what was happening in the world, obviously, but like, I don't think I even realized the mental break that I needed. Like, I felt like I took a good amount of breaks for my brain, but I don't think I understood the level until that happened. And I was like, oh, the whole world being quiet and doing nothingness is so therapeutic, right? Meanwhile, there are other people who are literally like ramming their head against the wall. And by week 2, my middle sister came and stayed with us for 5 weeks because of course we were like both unemployed. And I couldn't work as an OT because I would go into the homes of families. And of course with COVID, they were like, nope, you've got to stop going in the homes of families. And we don't have an online structure set up for you guys. So you all are just sitting with your hands underneath your butt for the foreseeable future, right? And I think it took them like 6 to 8 weeks for even the option for me to go back to work. So my sister stayed with me for about 5 weeks. And after week 2, we literally I was just like, let's just get in the car and just drive. And we just drove all the back roads of Kentucky, looked at all the horse farms, would get out of our car because nobody was around, take pictures. Like, it was actually so much fun. But, there did come a point where we're like, oh my God, I can't be alone with my thoughts. I can't. So that's ultimately what I want you to kind of see as the first step of, am I even regulating? Do I even know what's going on in my system before I even start the emotional regulation skills? Okay. So if you're sitting, and I always tell people, like, give yourself 20 minutes if you can, 10 minutes minimum, or 5 minutes minimum if you're really suffering. But set your timer on your phone or the microwave or the stove or whatever you have. Put, again, your phone out of reach, far, far away to where you can't even look at it. Put it on silent, turn off the vibration, like no distractions, and just see what comes up for you when you have to sit with nothingness, when you're not allowed to do anything. Don't fold laundry. Don't dust. Don't do anything. And just notice the discomfort that happens in your body, the discomfort that happens in your brain, the thoughts that rush your brain. Because a lot of times the longer you sit, the more your brain goes, oh, she's not, or he's not distracting themselves. Let's show them this thing that they've been avoiding for the last 2 years. Oh, look, they're still sitting. This is great. Let's show them what they haven't looked at in 15 years. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe that he or she is still sitting. Let's show her this that she buried down 10 years ago and she thought she got over it because she talked about it twice, right? Like, this is what our brain does the longer that you sit, and it will offer and show things to you in your mind. And what tends to happen is initially those first 5 minutes are kind of like conscious, where you're like, I should be dusting, I should be doing something, this is so stupid, I hate Macy for making me do this, that's such a dumb idea, I should read a book. Like, it'll be more like the conscious things. What should I have for lunch tomorrow? What should I pack the kids? Oh, I need to do laundry. And then when you get past that, like if you can sit long enough to get past what I call kind of the more upfront conscious kind of thoughts of all the things you think you need to be doing, then you start welcoming the subconscious stuff, like what happened that, you stored away. It happened when you were 6 years old. You forgot about it. It seemed insignificant. You haven't thought about it since. And your brain just decides like what's important to show you, whether it makes sense or not. And a lot of times my clients are like, I feel emotionally unstable whenever I do this because I've never slowed down enough to see what my body is storing. So that's the first thing, right? Like, a lot of us don't even know what we're holding on to. I call it the locker of feelings, or what's being stored in your emotional locker. And it's kind of like we're walking around, we've stuffed all of this stuff inside, a metaphorical locker. We've put the lock combination on it, as well as padlocks and all of the things. And those little slits at the very, very top, I imagine that every time we have a life circumstance that feels hard and challenging or traumatic, or just I don't want to deal with that emotion, it's basically like shoving it in the little slits of the locker at the top. And there comes a point where your locker is full. And how to know if your locker is metaphorically full is if you just feel like you're being swallowed by life, where it just feels like, what's the point? Why am I even here? And it doesn't mean that you're suicidal, right? Because if those are the types of thoughts you're thinking, I'm just going to tell you off the bat that coaching is not the place you need to be in right now. Like, it's not to say you can't do coaching if you're battling a lot of kind of fresh mental health issues. It's just saying that you need greater support than I'm able to offer, even as a licensed occupational therapist and a certified coach, right? Like, you need someone that's a psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor of some sort that is trained specifically to spot anything that I might not be able to see. So if you're having like any kind of suicidal thoughts, like on a consult, sometimes people have brought that up to me, and I lovingly tell them, like, I will always have the door open for you for coaching. However, coaching is a little bit more tough, where therapy is holding a lot of space and can be a little bit more gentle and in the approach. And so they might need therapy first, or they might need, both, but have both, right? Not have coaching over therapy if that's the place that you're in. Now, I'm going to rewind to go back to saying that if you're in a place where you're just kind of like confused about why we're even here, not suicidal, but just kind of like, what is the point of life? I just don't understand. I'm stressed out all the time. I'm not my highest self. I'm not who I want to be. I'm emotionally just all over the place. I feel overwhelmed. I feel a lot of anxiety. I feel a lot of stress. I feel a lot of occasional like depression, like I don't really know what I want. I just feel a little bit lost. I don't feel like I have friends that are, or family that know how to lift me up or get me out of this funk where I am growing. Like if those are the kind of thoughts that you feel swarmed by, it could be a sign that there are some things that have piled up in your metaphorical locker over time that need to be cleaned out. So in coaching, what we do is we look at what your goals are, and then we look at whatever the gap work is that is keeping you from being at your goal right now. And sometimes we open that locker not to stay there, right? Not to revisit every little piece that's in your locker, but we open the locker to see like, okay, you're telling me that you want to be the person that can, be present with your family and calm and patient and loving towards your kids and be able to handle when they go through an emotional meltdown without you having an emotional meltdown. Like, that's what you're telling me that you want. But then you're telling me that instead you're as soon as your kids have an emotional breakdown, you have an emotional breakdown, you're screaming at them, you're yelling at them, you have to later apologize to them, you end up getting in a fight with your significant other. Like, that's where you are, but that's not where you want to be. And so coaching looks at why. And so we will open the locker and pull out what is necessary to figure out what is keeping you from being the person you envision right now. And a lot of times it is the lack of emotional regulation skills, aka emotional intelligence. It is the lack of awareness around your mind and how your brain operates in forms of protection. And it is also not having the accessibility, right, to a group of people that are all doing this work, or someone that has done this work and can help you get there. So there are a few things that will keep you from being where you want to be. So let's talk about once you kind of recognize, like, okay, I clearly have things in my locker. I have trouble sitting with myself. I felt like I was going a little bit cray-cray, right? Then comes the step of what are the emotional regulation skills that I need? So the first thing that I want to kind of share is that one, you need awareness of what's happening inside of your body when you feel emotionally unregulated. Okay, so what this means is that when your kid starts tantruming and they're being a kid and they're having trouble managing the big emotions in their body and what their brain is doing that's creating it, that you have to recognize what's happening within yourself. This was the biggest challenge for me when I was a pediatric occupational therapist, because when I would be in a daycare setting and one kid would start crying and then another kid would start crying, and then maybe they would hit each other with a toy because they're having trouble sharing and regulating their emotions of something being taken away, right? Like my initial reaction would be very flustered of, okay, this is a lot for me. I don't know how to like, I'm not your parent. I don't know how to like get this fight, broken up between two-year-olds where you all are hitting each other and screaming and spitting on each other and then trying to spit on me, like, because then it would trigger, my emotional stuff that I had not dealt with. And it sounds so silly, right? That you can be triggered in such a way, even by little tiny human beings. But if you haven't really looked at your stuff of why you're even triggered, you will just respond a lot of times without thinking. So the awareness that you develop is so important as to why is this really triggering me? Why is this bothering me? What is coming up for me in this moment? And the key thing is to not respond before you figure it out. Okay, so you want to really observe yourself in the heat of the moment, which I think is the hardest part and something that takes my clients practice, right? It took me years of practice to not just impulsively react on my emotions, but to instead observe them with kindness and compassion and know that I'm safe in my body. Even when my emotions feel very uncomfortable, I'm still safe in my body because I create my safety, right? And being able to observe like, why is this bothering me so much? So to give you an example, although I had, triggers every now and then with working with little tiny babies and toddlers, and the reason being that I later found out through coaching was because of my childhood traumas at that age. But I've shared about that in the past, so I don't remember what episode, but you might find it if you go in order. But anyways, I have noticed in recent years another thing that has triggered me. So I used to always have this story in my brain, and I will be fully transparent that sometimes this is still a story that my brain tells me, but I've had a story in my brain for years that I don't love being around children when they're past the age of like 5 years old, but specifically when they're around like 9, 10, 11. For some reason, and I've never, for the longest time, I never knew why. I know why now, but this is what I want to tell you. I never knew why I was so triggered around kids at that age. Like 8, 9, 10, 11, and I struggled. So it was like, put me in a pediatric situation with babies, toddlers, 3-year-olds, like the terrible 2s, the terrible 3s. Like I will thrive overall in that area. I love that age. My sister, my middle sister has, my niece, and she just turned 1, December 19th, and she's picking up on the toddler, like screaming and just into everything and pulling all the diaper wipes out of the little thing. And of course my sister loves her, but it's driving her insane. And every time she sends me videos of things that she's doing, like I can't help but to giggle and laugh, not because I don't feel sympathy and empathy for my sister, but because I love that age. Like, yes, it is challenging, but I seriously love it. So when I have children, if I'm complaining on the podcast years from now, someone write in and message me and say, these are your favorite years, just PS, okay? So I love that age. So I'm really not bothered by the things that they say and do. Like I don't know. I really love it. But as soon as kids get to like 8, 9, 10, 11, for the longest time, I was just triggered by it. And sometimes I still am. I noticed this trigger last summer, still being there, even though I thought I had worked on it. And what I came to find after being triggered around kids of this age, because I would just become annoyed. And like whenever they would have like a preteen tantrum or like a meltdown of some sort, I would just feel myself, I'm just going to be fully transparent because I like to be honest with you guys. I would feel myself wanting to be really mean, like bratty, like not like an adult. You know what I mean? Not like an emotionally intelligent adult. Like instead of being able to handle them as they are and help them navigate their big emotions, instead it was like what I call being petty Betty, where I just wanted to like lose my shit on these kids, right? Or kid. And I would be, but I had enough awareness in doing this coaching work where I'm like, I'm not thinking nice things and I'm not being nice. And I know that I'm wanting to almost like have this bully behavior where I really want to stick it to them. You know what I mean? Like if they're being sassy, I want to be sassy. If they're being little, what I would consider like bratty, like I want to be bratty. You know what I mean? Like I would just have like this super strong negative emotional reaction. And of course, the story in my brain or the thoughts in my brain were like, they should not be acting like this, or they're so annoying, or I hate this age, or I don't do well around this age. Like, I despise this age. Okay. Now, two things. We know that the thoughts in our brain, whether conscious or subconscious, are what creates our emotions. So of course, I'm not going to have good emotions when I'm thinking thoughts like this is annoying, I hate this age, kids are so annoying at this age. Like those thoughts create my emotional experience. Okay? So when I'm looking at my emotional experience being negative, it's like, well, of course, those thoughts are not the most lovely when you think about kids that age. The second thing that I came to realize after I watched a 10-year-old have this full-blown tantrum that literally made me sick to my stomach. I was so like frazzled over the whole thing. And I really, like I said, I felt really mean. Like I wanted to emotionally be there for them, and I wanted to teach from an emotional adulthood kind of way, like with the skills that I know that I have deep inside, but my own body, my own nervous system was not emotionally regulated. And so I could feel, I didn't act on it, which is important, right? That's something we should never take for granted, is the skill that we're developing even to pause and not be impulsive. So I was able to control my impulses, but what I noticed was I'm just not in a space where I could have handled this as my best self. So I went on my own, I sat with myself, and I really observed why this was maybe happening. And I realized, you guys, that the thought that was super subconscious, like I had to sit with myself for a while, which P.S., I want to normalize that when you sit with yourself initially, you may not understand why you're doing the things you're doing or feeling the way that you're feeling. Like, I want to normalize the fact that this work takes time. And that, a lot of times my coaching clients want the magic pill or the magic wand. They want to be better immediately. They want the fastest solution. And I just want to tell you that if you're undoing a lot of the things that have become familiar for you in your life, it takes time. It's not going to go away at the snap of a finger. Okay? Like you're going to have to give yourself grace and compassion to work through it. So I sat with this for a while before my subconscious brain kind of showed me the reason why I have always had these other thoughts around this age group. And my thoughts were, you need to act like an adult. Okay, that's one thought. You need to grow up. That was the second thought. The third thought is, I didn't have the luxury to complain the way you're complaining, which is like the ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner of why I have felt this way my whole life. When I was around 10 years old, there was a diagnosis in my family of someone that changed the whole trajectory of my childhood. And that diagnosis and the way that it was navigated was so challenging for me as a kid that I had to grow up really fast, because at 9, 10, 11 plus, I became an overnight mini adult to take care of things, I added responsibilities to my plate that nobody asked me to take on, but it was kind of like, if I don't take it on, things are not going to be okay. So my little 10-year-old self grew up very quickly. I didn't have time to complain. I didn't have time to not want to do it. I lost a lot of the childhood innocence and experiences that my friends got to continue to have in their healthy upbringings in childhood. Like, everything changed for me around 10 years old. And sitting with that and learning how to emotionally regulate myself, right? To sit with my emotions, to feel what I'm feeling, to welcome the thoughts. It brought up, I didn't have the luxury of being able to complain the way you are. So it's like, if a 10-year-old complains that their internet's not fast enough, right? Or their game's not working, or they're mad because you're making them do homework when, they want to be with their friends or whatever. My emotional tolerance has always been very short for things like that. That's when, here's what I want to say. I know that this is a longer episode, but it's like, I know when I see this happening in my mind, the things that I have to work on now before I even become a parent, right? Or the things that are going to be beneficial. I could get pregnant and have babies now, of course. But these are the things that are very important for me to figure out, of why I'm even having those thoughts and emotional experiences, right? And being able to work on the skill of regulating it, because I know from other experiences of being a bystander around that age that I become very frustrated, that I know that I want to lose my absolute mind, that I want to scream and yell. And I can't promise that if those situations, if it were my kid, that I would handle it with emotional intelligence. I'm just, I want to be super transparent about that. I'm a human as well, because when it happens, I become so emotionally unregulated and enraged about whatever they're complaining about, that I know that I would not be my best self. And so if you're asking yourself, why is this work important? Why might hiring a coach be important? Why is emotional regulation important? Why is emotional intelligence important? This is why, okay? Because there are reasons why you behave the way that you behave. And a lot of times it's because of sneaky things that you have not addressed. That's why slowing down enough and being intentional is such an important key point of this work. So if I had buffered when I felt annoyed by, 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, if I had gotten on my phone or gotten on Netflix or went to alcohol or whatever, I would not have found the thoughts of, I don't have the luxury, or I didn't have the luxury of being able to complain the way that you're complaining, right? That's so huge, to allow myself the space for that to bubble up in my brain, because then I'm like, there's underlying resentment for the childhood that I felt like I had to give up in order to make sure that certain people in my life were okay. Okay, it was the start of people pleasing. It was the start of a lot of emotional trauma for me, a lot of anxiety for me, a lot of depression for me. That age does not come with the best of memories. So when a child is complaining, or even children that can't self-entertain. So I grew up, I have sisters, but they were raised by my mom and stepdad, and then I was raised by my grandparents. So I saw my sisters all the time, usually a lot after school with my great-grandparents, because my great-grandparents would babysit us all until, family members got off of work. So I saw them a lot, but I didn't actually live with them. So I didn't have to share my stuff. I didn't have the traditional sibling experience. And so my husband teases me all the time that I have only child syndrome, which could be partially true. I definitely have my moments where I'm like, ooh, that was a little selfish, or yep, I definitely want things a certain way because I didn't have to adapt as a kid to that. But all of that to say When I've even been around children that can't self-entertain at that age, I become very annoyed because it's like, go figure it out. Like, that's what my brain offers. Go figure it out. Like, I had to self-entertain. I had to keep myself busy. I don't understand why you're having such a hard time being bored. Like, go figure out how to be on your own and play on your own. Like, those are thoughts that I have because I was raised by my grandparents by myself, where I had to go use my imagination. I had to go play by myself. They didn't always want to play with me, right? They didn't want to sit on the floor and play Barbies or pretend to cook or play babies. Like, I do have memories where sometimes they would, right? But I have a lot of memories where I was the kid in the backyard, like pretending to play pirate ship by myself on the swing set. Like, you know what I mean? So when kids that age are like, I'm bored, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, I need you to be right here, I need you to do this. Like, it's another way I see my brain become highly triggered and frustrated, where I want to just lose my mind. And I could foresee that with my own children, I might be like, figure it out on your own. You know what I mean? And I know that that's not the parent I want to be. I really, like, whenever I worked as a CLS worker, what I said in the beginning with kids with special needs, I remember it's such a core memory for me because it hit me in the absolute soul. And it was like a treasure that I was like, I want to put this in my when I'm a parent box. And I've done that with the last several years of being an OT, you know, with doing that CLS work. I would definitely watch parents that made me feel safe, like even in their home, like just the safety that they provided for their kids, the emotional safety, their emotional regulation, their, you know, just safeness. Like, I really paid attention to that, and the ones that were present, like, and I made mental notes, like, I want to be this parent. I want to be the one that's like this. But I could also see the discrepancies where I might not be that parent because of lack of emotional regulation. So when I was a CLS worker, I remember I would work like 10-hour days because the parents were working like 10-hour days. And so I would go in early morning by like 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and I would be there for, God, a very long time. And you know, getting a little taste of parenting here and there. And, you know, no, you can't have that. Yes, you can have that. Yes, you can play this game. No, you can't do that. No, you know, all of the things. And I was tired. Let me just tell you, like, I was tired. It's all of the years that I've worked with kids has probably contributed to why I've held off on having my own, because I know the fatigue from the level of being in the home, whether the parent was absent or not, and just the mental, emotional, physical fatigue that happens. God bless all of you parents. I'll get there one day, but right now I'm like, oh, Jesus, that's a lot. So this parent came home after her incredibly long work day. She looked tired. I don't mean that in a mean way, obviously, but like when she walked through the door, it was like defeat. I later found out also she was in the middle of a divorce. So I imagine that she was probably trying to regulate her emotions with the messiness of this divorce, in process, trying to keep her kids happy, trying to be, you know, super mom, thinking of the stressors of being a single parent and financially providing. I think she wanted to go back to school. She had a lot going on. And she came home from work and she looked just so freaking tired. And I think I was sitting in the kitchen and she even said, like, whew, this has been a long day. I'm so tired. And no sooner than she uttered those words, right, her little girl came running in, who was about 8 years old at the time. She came running in and she had rollerblades, and she was like, Mom, can we go outside and rollerblade? I've been waiting for you all day to do this with you. Immediately in my head, I had the response, hell to the no. Like, I am tired. You all have worn me out. Like, this is me having self-dialogue to myself. I'm tired. You all have worn me out. Absolutely not. I'm not putting on rollerblades and going outside. I'm laying on the couch for 10 minutes. What in the world? Like, please don't ask me to do another thing. But instead, I watched this mom with tiredness, right? Just go, of course, baby, I will go do that with you. I'm so glad you waited for me. She literally put her stuff down from work that she hadn't even been able to set down, strapped on those rollerblades, and went out and skated with her daughter for probably like a good 15 to 20 minutes. I could cry thinking about it because when I watched from the window, I thought, oh my God, that is the mom, like that is what I want, where I have like regulated myself enough that even if I am tired, I can see through that my kids are so excited to spend time with me, that they are still learning, that their brain is still growing, that they just want that quality time, that I am their safety, that I am, the person that is going to help shape their life experiences. And it's really hard to show up as that kind of mom if I am emotionally unregulated and tired beyond words and not taking care of myself and not, if I don't have self-care skills, if I'm not prioritizing my health, my mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, my overall well-being, if I'm not investing in myself, if I'm not putting myself in rooms where there are people actively lifting me up, if I'm not doing all of those things, it's going to be very hard to show up in a way that is not from subconscious emotional exhaustion and a lack of regulation. And I've had so many memories like that burned into my core being a pediatric OT, because I served over probably 350 families easy. It's probably way more than that. And there were so many families where I just thought, they're so emotionally intelligent. Like that is the parent that I want to be. So even my work is looking at the indiscrepancies, right? Or the discrepancies. Indiscrepancies? I don't know. It's looking at the gap work myself of, who I want to be and how I want to show up for these babies I don't even have yet, my kids, my family, my husband, and where I currently am now. And there's so much work that I have to be willing to sit with to calm my nervous system, to emotionally regulate, to become more self-aware, to practice these skills. So I know that this is a longer episode. It's very rare do I do an hour-long episode, but I just want to stress the importance of this, of when you're doing this work, please pat yourself on the back. I know it feels like a long journey. I know that it feels slow. I know that you may not feel like you're getting where you want to be fast enough. I know people in your life may not be noticing the changes in you as fast as you would like them to, or at all. I know how challenging it may be. I know that you're still going through triggers on sometimes a daily basis, but I see you. I see you. I am proud of you. This is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? So things are not going to happen at the snap of a finger like we want them to. I wish I could do that for you. I wish I could do it for me, right? I wish that there was like some sort of special little crystal ball we could look at and be like, oh, I did it. I got there. I figured it out. But the truth is that as humans, we're going to have those emotional experiences. We're going to have experiences that feel uncomfortable in our body. We're going to have experiences that feel comfortable and cozy in our body. We're going to have the ones that feel negative and the ones that feel positive. We can't escape the fact that there's duality in life where you're going to have both, no matter what kind of car you drive or house you have or money you obtain or job that you have. Like there's always going to be those moments that feel hard, but when you're equipping yourself with the skills, when you're actively working on yourself, you will never go wrong. And you're in it for the long game, right? You're in it for the skills you will develop, where if everything were to fall apart tomorrow, you know how to have your own back. You know how to regulate your emotions. You know how to be your highest self, even when life is offering what I call shit sandwiches, because it always will. Right? That's why you're doing the work. That's why you're engaging and staying with it and sticking with it. That is why you actively choose to do the things that you're doing when you decide to work on yourself. That's why you make this stuff a priority. It's why you're listening to the podcast. It's why you're reading the book. It's why you make the scary investment sometimes to hire the coach that resonates with you. It's why you're doing it. Because at the end of the day, if everything were to be wiped out from underneath you, right? If you had to start over from scratch, I want you to do it where you're on level ground and not feeling like you're digging yourself out of a 60-foot hole. Okay? Because I've lived there. I know what it is, and I know what it feels like to be in the 60-foot hole. And it doesn't feel good. It feels like it's never going to get better. It feels like the sun is never going to shine. It feels so daunting and exhausting. And I can promise you, if that's where you feel that you are right now, where you're drowning or you're barely coming up for air, that your life can feel so different. So different if you make this work a priority. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here to help you. I would love to coach you through this. So if you need any help with emotional regulation, if you're ready to, learn the emotional intelligence skills that's going to change all of this for you, schedule a 60-minute consult and we will talk about the best option for you. I have multiple offers right now. I'm so excited about them. One includes getting to work with me one-on-one and in group coaching, and you get an in-person retreat with me where we are just going to do all of the amazing blend of coaching and relaxation on beautiful 30A in Florida in September. That program starts in April. It's called the Equip Society Hybrid Experience. So when you go to MacyRenee.com, you'll want to look at the hybrid experience. And you get to have it all. I've been working on the workbook nonstop for this to really just help you through it. I'm just so excited. So if you're interested in learning more about that or working together in the other ways that I can help you, be sure to schedule a consult as soon as possible. Reach out to me. I would love to have this conversation with you, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.